that right foundation, which is very difficult. And most of the time, again, even companies that are bigger, that can be something that gets missed because you're focused on the product, you're focused on, operations, on growth. You're just, you're moving forward. So a lot of times, this marketing aspect is overlooked.
Well, David, thank you so much time for breaking away from all those companies you're helping to restory and rebrand and get out there to a new market. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Edge of Excellence.
Thank you, Matt.
Well, I love having you. I love catching up. I'm so glad that our brand manager found a post that you made about College Works 20, 25. How long has it been?
20 years.
20 years later. And we're going to get into College Works, but we're going to get into, before we get into College Works, before we get into launching and expanding companies like Solar City and Renew Financial, founding your own business, full scope agency, building a business from the ground up, I got to get my pen out. What is your definition of excellence?
Yeah. So for me, Matt,
wait a second. I need my yellow card. I don't know where my yellow card went. I got this thing is a yellow card. I got a yellow card you. We can't have the guests looking better than the host. I just noticed. You're a better looking dude than me. I'm looking in here. I got my googly eyes, my big round face, and you're all handsome. So you get a yellow card for being better looking than the host. Now, please continue with your definition of excellence.
So for me, Matt, excellence isn't about grinding harder. I think that's what a lot of people, at least what I thought, when I was younger, it's about creating clarity. Clarity is what builds passion. Clarity, creates forward momentum. When you know why you're doing something, even the hard days, make sense, and you start to have purpose. That lesson for me today is probably more relevant for people that are in their 20s, because I think back to like when I was in my 20s and the housing crash just happened, recession.
Oh, yeah.
And back then, how, everything was being disrupted in terms of, the normal, path, like the status quo of, you graduate, you have a job, you're kind of coasting. And right now it's almost eerily similar, where it's that same thing. Like you can't just graduate and expect to just, have a job. The job market today, doesn't come with a roadmap. The ability to create your own clarity and again, find that purpose, is really what helps, because a lot of people end up, graduating, spending a lot of years in school, getting high degrees, only to find afterwards that they don't really love that one thing that they thought that they wanted to pursue.
Mm-hmm. So purpose, having the right focus, knowing why you have the right focus, that will create purpose. That will drive your passion. That'll drive your forward momentum. I love that.
Well,
and then it's not a grind. Then it's not a grind. Then it's fun.
Well, it's not a grind, but I think what also is important, because sometimes you might be waiting for clarity, like just sitting there and not taking action. But I think, but what's important is that clarity comes through action, that in the end, you have to just start doing something, and then clarity comes. Because if you wait for perfect clarity before you move, you'll never move. Yeah. It's through action. And sometimes, failure, and that's how clarity reveals itself. So you can't wait for clarity. You have to create it, through action.
Yeah. Okay. I like that one. Okay. We're going to get more into that definition of excellence, and we're going to get more into how you lead all these companies through strategic marketing renovation. We're going to get into how to stay tight with a business partner, because I know you have a business partner, Payman. What's his last name?
Shahid.
Payman Shahid. How do you guys stay together? We're going to get into traveling the world with your family. And David's kids have been to at least as many countries as they are years old, as have mine. And that's kind of a cool thing that we bond on, because increasing worldview through travel, especially now. And you were talking about when you came out of college. So I'm just thinking, 20 years ago when you worked at College Works, that was 2005. So you came out of college 2007?
2000, Well, it was 2009. So like, it was,
Even worse, even worse,
yeah.
worse. So some people listening to this weren't around in 2009. Most people listening to this don't remember 2009, but that was the Great Recession. And interesting that you're talking about it feels the same way. Now we got AI, now we got global political strife, now we've got, just a strange place in the world. But 20 years ago, we had the Great Recession. And 20 years before that, we had another mega recession in the Carter and later Reagan eras. And 20 years before that, we had, the Korean War. And 20 years before that, we had World War II. So maybe we should stop this 20-year cycle. First of all, let's shut down the 20-year cycle. Second of all, it does feel overwhelming at different eras of the world. And it was way better a few years ago, and it will be way better again. But you get the cards you're dealt. And funny that you bring it up, because I went to iFly yesterday with some business buddies where you jump in a tube and and I was the best out of like 20 of us, which is really important to me. My wife doesn't understand it. I'm like, Jill, everything is a competition. You're going to die of stress. Who cares? Everything is a competition. And
how can you be the best at iFly? What's
I
your
was the
definition
only guy that had done it a few times. Here's how. Your kids wanted to do it for their birthdays and you went like 4 times. So you figured it out and nobody else has ever been. That's a good way. That's a good way to be. I wasn't excellent, but I was right down with my friend Bill Lyon, who is the nicest guy in Orange County. Shout out to Bill Lyon, the nicest guy. Actually, I have a certificate here. Believe it or not, it's official. Bill Lyon is the nicest guy in Orange County. I send him one of those every now and then. And he was talking about his daughter at USC was saying, oh my God, look at this. And he's like, well, that's how it was when I got out. That's how it was before. So if you're listening right now, it is stressful. Shit is crazy. We agree, but it will get better and you can get through it. And maybe focusing on clarity and why and what you want to do will help you get more passion and get through it. We're going to get into all of that stuff. But before we do, we got to go way back. We got to go way back to high school. I got to know what life was like in high school. You weren't running a marketing agency. You weren't an entrepreneur. What were you doing in high school?
Yeah. So in high school, I was a little bit nerdy, a little bit, socially awkward. I was going to a college prep public school at the time. And,
where were you?
University High School in Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson.
Where I grew up. And I played violin, prior to high school. I was in the chess club, but I was big into the violin. Like I played it at school. I was in the community in a couple different groups, got really good with that. And that's really where my focus was. It was a little bit in sports, but I wasn't great in sports. It was academically, I found that, in middle school, I was good. Once I went to this college prep school, I became like middle of the road. So comparing myself wasn't helpful, but I still like keeping myself challenged and busy. And that's also, what playing the violin did for me too. It was like an outlet, there's passion and same thing. It kept me challenged with, having myself get better and better, with it.
So school, but just to flag this, like school for me wasn't challenging. I got straight A's and it was boring. And so I did really bad things. Me and my buddies went off and did bad things with BB guns and just scoundrels. And I was bored in New Mexico. You're in Tucson. It can be boring in the desert, but I was bored. You weren't bored in school. You just chose to focus on a different challenge. It just wasn't the right challenge for you.
Yeah, because that whole sense of purpose, like there really wasn't anything deep within it. Like, at the time I'd taken a, end of middle school, took a test. It had me get into that school. So it wasn't necessarily, as much of a choice, or again, knowing that, okay, this is my path. It was kind of chosen for me and accepted it and was still excited to do it. But, ultimately, what I realized coming out of high school is academics wasn't all that interesting, especially because, being surrounded by all these like really smart, intelligent people, again, I wasn't, top of the pack. I wasn't bottom, but there's really nothing I felt, stood out for me as much there. And it really led me to, going to college, wanting to figure that out. Like, what is it that I want to do? Because, I wasn't quite sure. I had a dad in, in medicine, and but I knew that I felt like I didn't want to go down that path. That I wanted to be able to find my own, purpose and
and passion and create clarity and avoid the grind. School was a grind. Wasn't, back to your definition, wasn't one of your passions. Wasn't aligning with where you saw yourself going. And, maybe that was right or wrong, because it's hard to make those judgment calls when you're 14 to 18. But you found something else to make your passion, to put your energy into, to challenge you, to help you grow. And then did you go to U of A?
Yeah, I went to U of A. I stayed in Tucson. I moved into the dorms to still,
well, you did,
still get the college experience, even though, my family was still local. And that still, really helped me, because again, I was also really, wanting myself to become, more independent, both through, starting to work, had my first job, the summer before college, and then wanting to find ways to not only, pay for myself while I was in college, but also to be able to, again, find that thing that would be able to, be my foundation and my springboard to, to go from there.
What did you major?
Once I graduated, I majored in regional development, but that was after first starting in business, and I was going to lower level classes in the business school, and for me, that was boring. Like I initially thought I had different expectations as to what business would be.
Yeah, because they stick in all those economics classes and shit. That's boring. And then they start you off with stats and finance, which, if you're that type of thinker, and you can go to episode number 4, disc, if you're a C, stats and finance is going to be good for you. If you're like me and you're a DI, you don't think that way. And that's how it was at UCSB too. They put you through these filter classes, but they're filtering the wrong way, because there's another side of business. There's 2 sides. There's the analytical accounting side, and then there's the people execution strategy side. So yeah, sometimes the schools miss that.
But you know what? It wasn't just business. It was also, so I started in business, and I also started with a minor in music. And despite the fact that I had this all these years, I started playing violin when I was 5, but when I started taking music courses, in college, I hated that too. I hated the music theory.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, it was the same thing with business, like sitting in those classes. So anyway, I switched majors, and I ended up deciding on regional development, which was urban planning. But where my interest was it was more on the sustainability side, with the environment. There was a little bit of geography.
So it does tie to where you ended up.
It does, but again, at the time, did I have that clarity? No, but that was something that to me at the time was more interesting. I was looking around, and that to me was the most interesting thing at the time, even though I still didn't quite know exactly what I would do.
So when you're chasing your passions, creating clarity, you're using your interests to filter what your passions might be. And you're analyzing, this is A, B, this versus that. A is more interesting, I'm gonna stop doing B. Then A, B, the next one. B is more interesting, I'm gonna start doing that instead of A. And that's what you're doing with your life to figure out, clarity around where you want to head.
And I didn't at the time know what clarity was or what I was doing, but exactly what's that thing that, when you wake up every single day, you have a little bit more excitement, to go and do, versus, having a little bit more of that feeling of dread and I have to drag myself out of bed to go and do this thing. It's not to say that the thing you have clarity with, doesn't come with its set of challenges and days like that, but the majority of them, should feel, invigorating and that what you're doing is leading somewhere, it's taking you to, ultimately, where you want to be.
People forget that part. People are good at saying, not everything you do, you're going to love. Work is work. Some people are like, I just have to love every aspect. No, it's a blend. You just want to love more of it than you don't love. And you want to make sure the ones you don't love don't conflict with your direction, your morals, things like that. Because once that happens, that's a slippery slope. It never comes back. Never comes back. Okay, so you're in college. You're doing urban planning. You're environmentally focused. You're starting to get that, maybe a more academic, start to get some clarity around environmentalism because you've got that in that urban focus. And what else was going on? I know you did College Works. What year was that?
That was also in two.
What was it? Sophomore?
No, it was freshman. It was
whoa.
So 2000. Like I recruited in 2005, but it would have been the spring of 2006.
You did 3 years?
Yeah.
So you did six, 7, 8.
Yeah.
You were in the thick of things. 06. I mean, I just remember back to that. Just to pause for a second on that.
Okay.
06, everything's going crazy. Everything's blowing up. Everybody's making money. Everybody thinks there's no way you could fail. 07, our company started to have problems a little bit. We were ahead of the recession. And you may not remember this. I do. We're in business with that horrible entity, Home Depot, where we were a service provider and they were supposed to generate leads. They didn't generate leads, and like idiots, we paid to generate the leads. And we're losing money because those shitheads didn't do what they said they were going to do. Not that I have problems with them. And then we had started a chemical company, which we didn't know what the hell we were doing. I learned all about core competency. Don't start a chemical company because you think it'll help your construction business. Bad idea. We also had a hardware company. We made hardware to filter leads for the mortgage industry. So didn't know what we were doing there. We built the website for the United Nations. Jay somehow figured that out with our hardware company. I don't know how that's possible. And we're just scattered everywhere. So we started receding before the recession. And in August, Jay renegotiated our bank lines. August of 2008, I guess it was. Thank God Jay did that because it was always April we did it, but he did it early. And then in September, Lehman crashed. And the stock market fell and everyone lost their jobs and houses became worth half as much and everybody's houses started getting taken. And that's when you're doing College Works and graduating. That's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So you're in urban planning. You're trying to figure out your life. You're a freshman, the last year of the big bubble ride, which we might be in right now. Who knows? It's been since 2016. We're supposed to enter a recession. So we'll see what's going to happen. Decided to do College Works. Why? And tell us about that for a second.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to what I was talking about, myself in high school. So, academically, I didn't have any problems there. Like I was able to succeed. Really where I found myself more challenged was, more socially on that side. Obviously, one thing with your group of like musicians and you have your people, but socially, just with the broader groups of folks, especially going into college and being in the dorms and, starting to mingle. So for me, like there was two things that drew me to College Works. It was that I wanted to find a way to be able to make some money. Like I was driven to do that because again, I did have this fire and this drive to like want to at least help pay for for my time in college and like not leave with any sort of debt. And second was I knew that that experience at the time was going to do just that. Like I didn't know how exactly, how I was going to do it and how it was all going to play out. But I told myself at the time, like, I'm doing this thing. Like I know it's going to help me. I know it's not going to be easy, but I knew. So again, you could call that clarity. Like I knew at the time that I had that clarity that this is that thing that's on that path for me to be able to help me grow in the way that I need to be able to grow right now.
Was it on the path to help you sort out what your passion and what your direction and what your forward momentum could be? Was it on that path or was it just on the path of general growth?
General growth. Like I'd like to claim that I had that much, foresight, was thinking that far down the road, but I really wasn't.
That's why I did it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer. I didn't even know what a lawyer was. I thought a lawyer was arguing cases on TV. Not many lawyers do that. I wanted to be a business lawyer. Business lawyers aren't arguing cases. Business lawyers are making sure everything's perfect. And I don't make anything perfect except for kids. Except for kids, I make perfect kids. I thought I was going for skills to manage a law firm, but really I was going for general growth. You started off as general growth. I just have a question
general
for
growth. Yeah, go ahead.
Just a side note on College Works, because we've had some eye-opening discussions recently. What did the average manager make when you were an intern? Do you know?
I might have known at the time. I don't know if I remember.
Does $9,000 sound about right? Average at the time?
Maybe.
I think it might have been around $9,000. Now it's around $19,000, which if you do inflation, it's about the same. $9,000 20 years ago, $19,000 now. For some reason, college students want to make $20,000 in the summer. Some make a lot more. We have 40, 50, 70. We had one 19-year-old woman do $360,000, make like 100. But the average was $9,000. Now, adjusted for inflation, the average $19,000, the same. The booking rate when you did it was 20%. Now it's 33%. So you had to do 5 estimates to get one job. Now they have to do 3. The average person booked 1 job a week back then. The average person books 1 job a week now. Your average job size was $3,500. Now it's $7,000. So as the numbers went up, everybody just kind of started doing less. Guess how much the average manager does in estimates over the course of the year? What would you guess?
At least 100 estimates.
It's like 45, dude.
What?
Yeah. Isn't this crazy? So I just wanted to, I don't know why I brought that up, but as you were talking of searching for clarity, searching for purpose, it not being a grind, sometimes you got to take advantage of the opportunity and get out of that ceiling. There's like a ceiling where they're calculating how much they're making. Raise the damn ceiling. So you came into College Works and you were looking for general path growth with an open mind to figure out what was out there. You were looking for serendipitous growth.
Well, and I knew that this was going to be, real world experience, which also I was looking for. Because again, the job that I'd had, was in a very controlled environment. So I also knew that, okay, that this is going to help me experience, the real world. So I didn't know exactly, what would come from that, but I knew that there'd be benefit, there'd be good in doing that. And it's funny when you mentioned like the number of estimates needed, I guarantee you, I was probably the one like on the lower end in terms of like needing to do more, because in terms of like the number of doors I had to knock on, like it was like batting practice for me. Like it probably took me a little bit longer in the beginning to get going. But then what I also realized, and these were a lot of the epiphanies back then, is even though, it may take me longer to get going with something, I end up becoming more consistent because I'm aware. I'm thinking about, okay, what's happening here? Like, what pivots or adjustments do I need to make? So then when I start, striking success and things are, going forward, it's sustainable success instead of,
the tortoise before the horse.
Well, and I don't know why.
Yeah. So some people always go slow. Some people go fast and then slow. But, the way to grow is work really hard. So I sucked at many, many things, especially business. I mean, for being at batting practice, 18 hours, didn't get a single lead my first time out. That's unfathomable. So you just got to go for another 18 hours. Couldn't book any jobs, got to go book more jobs. And you get that momentum and that cadence. And then when it clicks into gear, boom, you take off. And some people don't do it that way. Okay, so I don't know why I digressed into those numbers. I was just talking about that yesterday. I just wanted to get and that was exactly what I was looking for. You went like this, you went, what? You didn't look as bad as I did though, because of that flag before. Okay, so if you take too long to get going, do more, become consistent, and then you'll catch up and find that success. I like that. So were you doing anything else in college? I mean, college works takes up a bit of time. You're still doing your double major, and you graduated with regional development and music?
No, I ended up dropping the music. I, again, really didn't like it in the end. I liked playing, but again, did not like those classes.
Yeah.
I ended up switching my major in business. That became a minor. So I ended up, with a regional development bachelor's and then a minor in business. So at least like round out what little bit of business I'd started.
Okay. And then were you doing anything else, or that was your focus?
That was my focus. Like aside from, some social stuff, being, having group of friends and blowing off steam.
Wow.
Yeah, it was school and college works,
What did you want to do for a living back then? Did you want to get it? Did you find out then you wanted to get into marketing? Did you find out then you wanted to get into storytelling?
I mean, there's a point where it happened that I knew that I wanted to get into business, but it was the same. But obviously I started in college, with that, with that major in mind. So I already had an inclination that like, okay, I think this is going to be where I go. And the reason for me is because to me, that seemed like, it was an area where there was, the flexibility to create your own path. Because again, that my comparison was again looking at a medical path where you're very defined, and you have to do these certain things. So I knew that flexibility would be a benefit to me. When I figured that out was probably somewhere along the way in college works. It might have been after like that first year, and thinking back and realizing, okay, this is somewhat of what I want to do, something relating to sales, to like helping to connect with people. Like I knew that I wanted to be interacting with people, finding ways to connect with people. That whole
so you were fighting for clarity to find what your passion would be, but you're back to that bouncing down, using the bumpers down the bowling alley, and you said creating your own path. So you're trying these different things. I like this, I don't like that, I'm going to do this one. I like this, I don't like that, I'm going to do that one, and it's honing in. I think that's great for the listener right now. Because how the hell do you know what you're supposed to do for the rest of your life? No one's prepared these guys. They go to high school, they have a great time, they party, they play their sports, they go to college. No one in college does a disc test. No one in college sits them down. It's like, oh, pick your major. And by the way, here's what we're going to do. You want to be in chemistry? We're just going to flunk you if you're not right for chemistry. That's how you'll figure it out. And give you that OChem class to start and just level your confidence. Like nobody helps you bumper, but what you do is do what David did and start vetting, trying to create the clarity. You find the clarity. What's working? What's not working? Is it not working because I'm in a bad mood, or is it not working because it's going against kind of who I am? What's your passion? And then you can engage. Go, David.
Yeah. Well, let me add something else, because, when we're talking about this whole discovery of clarity, it really all didn't happen, just in college. Like what that looked like for me is, again, this was still like during the recession. So
you said it. You were
job,
open-ended. You thought maybe business. You didn't say I want to be a part-time CMO. Maybe business. I like sales. That's nowhere even close to part-time CMO. Not part-time, fractional.
So the first job I had at a college was as a corporate recruiter, working for like this multi-billion-dollar recruiting company, huge, massive. And it was great at the time because, obviously on the other side of the horrible job market, and was also helping people, in getting jobs. But what that also did is that's what further cemented clarity for me, because going from, the college works experience to then, being in this corporate environment where it was more about fitting into an existing system, and like people had their 10-year path, open an office, realizing like how uncomfortable that was for me, and how like that did not feel like purpose, even though, look, guaranteed paycheck, like, you're in the safe environment. And when I had the opportunity at the time to get into the renewable industry, that struck me in that moment, because it aligned with what my general idea of where I wanted to go would be. I knew I wanted it to be an emerging industry, something that was going to be growing, as opposed to chance of receding or just staying stagnant. And then also working for a startup, for a company that hadn't yet figured it all out. And those are the things that called to me. But at the time, and I know a lot of people end up saying this, you leave that corporate job and there's a lot of fear with it because, you have this knot in your stomach, like, what am I doing? Because I'm leaving this for sure thing. But that was one of the first things I did, about a year and a half after graduating, was taking the jump, moving to California, different state, didn't know anyone, working for a startup that barely had things figured out, went back to knocking on doors, which was also a bit crazy. There's moments of questioning, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Going back almost in a sense to college works days.
Yeah. The worst part of college works days too.
Yeah. But what I realized at the time was, this is where, like, I felt my passion. Like, this is where I realized, oh, wow, I can make impact. Like, I look back and I'm feeling the value that, that I'm able to create. And it became addicting because, from that moment going forward, for the last 15 years, I've stayed within the renewable industry, realizing, wow, this is where I'm meant to be. This is, where my passion is. But second is, I've worked nothing but for startups and scale ups for that same purpose, like making the jump into these earlier stage companies, helping them figure out, what's the why, what's the path, what's the process, who do we need to be talking to? How do we talk to them? All those things that are challenging to figure out, but they're fun to figure out. And that's ultimately what led me, to where I am now, recognizing that this is a common challenge that everyone faces. And it's something that I've just, naturally become good at because I've been forced to have to do it, over and over and over again. And it came from being and it came from, every time taking a leap, doing something that I was a little bit afraid of. Like, it was always a little bit outside of, what I'd done before.
Well, every time, change is scary. So perhaps business, I like sales. Try out recruiting, big corporate recruiting. Good skills, like it. Maybe it's not exactly right. Guaranteed paycheck, then into startups and that clicks in. And back into sales. So you kind of got that, wait, maybe it is the sales thing, but maybe it's not the sales thing. And you're down that bumper lane again, getting closer and closer and closer to it's marketing and it's startups. You like the excitement, you like the change, you don't like the comfort. Two different worlds, but you got to try this stuff out. And you're trying all these different things. And so, by the way, I just want to plug fullscopeagency.com. You want to find David, find him at fullscopeagency.com. That's the best way to get a hold of him. And you want to, if you're in this startup phase or maybe a little bigger than startup phase, if you're in the environmental arena and you need some help with your marketing, and by the way, we just did it at College Works rebranding. It makes a big difference. There's a lot involved. There's a lot to do, but it makes a big difference. You can find David at fullscopeagency.com. But tell us what is a CMO, first of all? We don't even know what that is. And the acronym, we don't even know what that is probably. What's a CMO and what does a CMO do? And then you have a different way of doing it. You are a fractional CMO, so you can work for 2 or 3 companies at once that maybe can't afford a full-time CMO. So why don't you explain what it is and what you do?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, what a CMO is, a chief marketing officer, is they're the ones, coming to a company and they're tasked with, figuring out, what should be this company's strategy, from a branding perspective, from what's the why, what's the company's purpose, to go to market planning, to, the creative. Okay, how do we, what's the assets? What are the things that we show people? How do we message? Like, how do we then say something so that as instantly as possible, that light bulb goes off in that person's mind that, that we're talking to? And then how do we scale? Like, what are the systems that need to be put in place, campaigns, to be able to then have this exponentially grow, as organically as possible. But it's all about having, that right foundation, which is very difficult. And most of the time, again, even companies that are bigger, that can be something that gets missed because you're focused on the product, you're focused on, operations, on growth. You're just, you're moving forward. So a lot of times, this marketing aspect is overlooked, or you'll have a founder that's very technical and has created this, amazing product. And that's what I've seen time and time again. There's amazing products that are out there, but people don't know about them. And the reason that they don't know about them is that they're not being talked to in a way that makes sense to them. They're being talked to as if like they're another engineer, or they're someone who's already in the space and should already know, what it is that, that this thing can do and why they should like it.
It's hard to be a inventor or an engineer and a CEO and a salesperson and the head of marketing and stay on top of all that. Like I just went through this rebranding. The changes, like every 3 years, you got to do a new website because everything changes. You got to do your new website. The changes and all the algorithms for all the review sites changes all the time. Just staying on top of it's next to impossible. So how could you do everything and that effectively? Can't.
And it's hard too when you're on the inside, right? When you're the person and you're inside those walls, it can be an echo chamber. It's hard to know how do people on the outside, see certain things. And actually, the most recent thing for me, my partner and I just went to Greenbuild, which was an industry event, for the sustainability industry. It was in just downtown LA. We went yesterday.
Oh,
and same thing there, where you have an industry that is a little bit confused. They absolutely don't have as much clarity today as before with just everything that's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And some of, lots of good conversations, but one of the ones that resonated was someone who talked about one of the talks that they heard, because there's many talks that people go to these conferences. Yeah. They said, oh, this person got up and man, they must have had 50 slides in their presentation, and it was all just pictures, but they kept me so engaged because of the story that they were telling. Mm-hmm. And what this person said is that's what that made me realize is, oh my gosh, the story that we tell, and how do we get, getting people to resonate with that and connect with it. That's really important. And a lot of times, even, and again, industries that have been around for a long time, it's easy to forget, or it can be challenging to think about the people that are outside the bubble. How do we connect with the people that are outside the bubble that normally wouldn't care, to get them to, get them to care?
Yeah.
And that's really what I'm helping companies with, is finding clarity, building systems, and, helping to tell their story. And what most students don't realize, is how much success depends on, alignment and communication. Strategy isn't about ideas. It's about getting people to move in the same direction, because everyone's trying to figure things out as they go. But it's all about cohesiveness, all about moving together.
Yeah. And no matter what your business size is, if you're a brand new startup with no revenue, if you're a multi-billion-dollar business, your stuff's got to look the same. You got to have a professional CMO, professional marketing department, not only look, but it's got to function the same, because you're just not going to keep up. You can't keep up with the 176 different listings your company has, where everything has to be uniform. And just for people that don't know, Chief Marketing Officer, you're in charge of everything that has to do with the brand communication, internal communication, which, how things look and feel going throughout the company. External communication, which is social, which is review sites, which is all the search engines, which is how you're perceived externally. It also includes the obvious, the ads and the marketing materials and all that, but it's more. It's the entire, the brand book, which, describes everything about the brand. And I'll tell you, I did not understand the need for consistency until I went through it this time. Fourth time I've done it, but it's all changed again. Everything changes. And because there's so much out there and so much confusion, if you're not consistent and it's not done right, and it takes somebody to do that. I know a lot about it because I have a marketing and sales business. We have our Home Genius business, which has an amazing marketing department of real high level people. I've learned a lot from them. My brother was CMO, I think, of Salesforce and chief of staff of Microsoft, and CMO, I think, of Dynatrace right now. We don't keep track of what we do. He did a podcast though. I mean, there's so much more involved with marketing. And yeah, AI is taking away a lot of jobs. Content creation, that's pretty much going away. Writing, that's going away. But a CMO and their team knows when to use AI, when to not, how to fold it in there. And how do you do that if you're an engineer that just made a new robot that everybody needs to have?
That or again, it's all human intuition in the end. Because like you said, there's always been tools, always. Now there's even more. But you need to know how to use these tools, because if anything, it's even more overwhelming today, because you're right. You can have AI, create the copy of what, for the social posts that are going to go out. But again, what's the story? Are they all going to make sense? Is everything all saying the same thing? And that's ultimately, again, what comes from the person. And then the other thing that I wanted to say that's come to mind as you were talking is, again, thinking back to even college works, because at the time, again, this epiphany didn't happen then, it happened later. Getting over that fear, that fear that I had at the time of again, getting myself out there, whether again it was knocking on someone's door or getting on a big stage, in a big hall for a classroom. Thinking back, because obviously I dove right back into that with that first startup job that I had. But it was because I recognized, this is how you get to know whatever it is that you're doing. It's about actually diving in, getting yourself in there, because that's how you truly understand and get a big picture, as well as again getting that clarity. And that's what I still carry to this day, and also what helped me to not be fearful of doing things that maybe I haven't done before, or diving in and figuring things out myself, which is also why over my career, I've done it all. I've worked with installers, been on the side of a house, gotten into electrical panels and trainings, to then boardrooms, to then working with sales teams, because end of the day, it's all similar, but it's the mindset of just rolling your sleeves up and being willing to try these things out, and knowing that the benefit to doing that, instead of, I feel like the way that a lot of people tend to think about things, which is, I should be able to do everything from right here. I can figure it all out, from this place. And that also is not the way that you get clarity. You have to be talking to people. You have to get out there. You have to be doing things yourself.
Yeah. You can speed it up. It's how you speed up your growth, your knowledge, your wisdom by more activity, by more getting out there. So I was just thinking as you were talking, it's funny. You just remember the good old days. I'm going to send this to Jane Kim. Just remember how great it was. We had Jane before there was Justin stealing Jane away. I do love Justin. I remember going to Justin's house, in Colorado, and the dog hair all over my body, and then getting in his car, and we're going to do a training with our suits on, and he's let his dogs climb all over the car, and I got hair all over me, and the fun times we had. We had some damn good times, David. You were talking. Just remember back. I mean, you're a memorable dude. There's been 30,000 people that have gone through. And I remember a lot of them, but I remember we had some good times. Well, give me the quick, because people say, I want to run a marketing agency. Well, what type of marketing agency? So you've got a different form of marketing agency where you take over and you're going to be the chief marketing officer. Do you have all the staff, or do you work with their staff, or both?
Both. So the way to think about what's fractional, because you've mentioned it a couple of times, is instead of hiring someone full-time, hiring that one person or even a team of people full-time, and they're on the payroll and they're permanent, the way to think about fractional is that we plug into an existing team. We become part of that team. So it's both working with their team, but also our team that we have to be able to move together.
And they get better people, better trained, better managed, because they probably don't know how to hire a full marketing team, manage a marketing team. They get that. And they also probably get some sort of cost savings because they can't afford to pay $350,000 to a CMO, or maybe don't want to. And then, the team goes from there. I mean, you could have I don't even know how much we spend at Home Genius, but there's a huge, very skilled, very professional, shout out to Victoria, who helps out at CollegeWorks too. We love Victoria. But it's a spend, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's getting more and more complicated. So you come in and plug into whatever they have with whatever they need, but you're providing the direction. You're the chief marketing and working with the CEO to make decisions on exactly where the brand's going and the messaging and everything else you're doing.
Yeah, it's working with their sales team. Like one of the clients we have now, we're putting together their sales training. So again, it's internal, external, so that everyone's talking the same language. Even helping them with scripts that they can follow. At least start as an outline.
It's external messaging. Training is internal messaging. That's all marketing. Mm-hmm. It's changed a bit recently. It used to be, do your own thing in your own department, and that'll probably work out, especially in small business. But because the world's changed, you need that clarity to create uniformity, or your employees get confused. If you're
right,
we had that at CollegeWorks. We had 4 or 5 different ways of doing things, and 4 or 5 different scripts, and 4 or 5, and that doesn't work. We brought it down to 1 to make it work, and that's internal messaging. That's communicating. So let me see what else I had to ask you. What do we need to know about your business, about your path to your business, about CMOing and marketing that we don't know already?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is, like, first and foremost, how it all ties back. Like, I think this whole, CMOing and, like, with marketing, the skills that I use the most are the ones that I developed, 20 years ago, or like tapped into, which is, curiosity, empathy, follow through, almost like having a scientific method of, like, okay, how do we figure out, what's going to work? And being able to be systematic about it, be able to be analytical. Because I think when people think of marketing, the first thing they always think of is they think of social media, or they think of, like, marketing campaigns, or the ads that are on TV and stuff like that. But what marketing really is marketing is data. Marketing is numbers. Marketing is actually way more analytical than what people think. And that's also what drew me to it. I'm not your traditional salesperson that tends to be like type A and more social and all these things. What I realized is I'm more analytically minded. I'm more like left brain. Mm-hmm. And for me, like that's been my, superpower in a way. And also what's led me to being, really good at sales and marketing, because of the thoughtfulness that goes behind it. So for me, and I think back to even my CollegeWorks interviews, and even like Josh Daniels, shout out to him, who like initially,
Josh Daniels.
Yeah. Who initially interviewed me. It was a horrible interview. Like I didn't do a good job, but he was able to see past that in terms of, in terms of my intention and energy and everything else. And I've gotten better with those things over the years. But really what that also has taught me is, again, you don't have to be, great at something right away. You can be able to figure that out, but you have to be mindful, as you're doing it. And I think with when it comes to marketing, it's that same thing, that a lot of companies will just kind of do what feels right in the moment. But again, you have to be doing something with intention, with purpose. And when you think about any of the successful companies that are out there, again, it always starts with that why, then the what, then the how. But most everyone starts, opposite of that.
Most small companies start with what, and they start shooting a bunch of random things out, and then later realize, oh, I need a strategy. I think it's pretty interesting. As you were talking, I got one statement, then one last question, and I'll let you go. You started off this whole thing about it's not the grind. It's not just the grind. And you grinded. You've grinded a lot in a path of narrowing down. The marketing industry became the industry that fit you. You didn't become the guy that fit the marketing industry. You stayed who you were, and you were trying things. But marketing changed. It used to be different. It didn't have the analytics that it does now. You didn't have the access to data. And if marketing hadn't, you probably would have found something else that fit better as you were going through your clarification process. Pretty interesting. You never know, because whatever you're looking at right now at doing might be totally different 20 years from now. Just crazy. Well, I got one last question, then I'll let you go. You look back into your 20s and you think about all those great times we all had together. God, I'm gonna have to call Jason and Justin and Jane, see how they're doing. I see I don't go on Facebook except maybe once a year, and Instagram like once every 3 months, because I hate Instagram because it's ruining our kids and making them feel upset because everybody's food's better and butt's better and trips better. Nobody puts their negative stuff on there. So I'm one man against Instagram. But I'm gonna go back and check out their stuff and reach out to them because they're talking to you. My last question. When you think back to those 20s, when we're having that great time, maybe later after, maybe it was that jump from big company to small company, what was a huge sacrifice that at the time you thought, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I'm so pissed I have to do this, whatever it was. And looking back, it was like one of the greatest things that ever happened to you?
Well, I think two things come to mind. I think the first sacrifice was back to your question about how to spend my time in college. So that really was a sacrifice I was knowing that I was making at the time, which was doing something that was really uncomfortable, that what was a challenge, left me with days questioning, what I was doing. So I knew what I was doing, was that sacrifice, but also taking that leap, from that corporate recruiting job was also a sacrifice that I, very much knew that I was taking. And, those decisions I knew came with risk, but again, it also, came with clarity. And every time I've chosen, clarity over comfort, it's what's paid off in ways that, I couldn't see fully at the time, but I knew that I had faith that it would, that it would come. Honestly, one of the best things that I've ever done was, let go of the idea that, balance, comes later. Because again, I think a lot of people too are looking for balance right away.
Okay. Well, we didn't get to this. This is the kids traveling. So I'm glad you brought this up. I forgot about this. Balance comes right away. Keep going.
Well, I'm saying it doesn't come right away. That balance comes later. That first,
no. Most people think balance should come right away, and it doesn't. You got to invest.
No,
yeah,
exactly. Because if you're too focused on balance right away, you don't put yourself into those same uncomfortable situations. And actually, meeting my wife is what taught me that balance, isn't the reward. It's part of the practice. It little by little gets worked in, as you're going, and you can have drive and still be present. Because again, I was way too focused on that stuff myself, and many reasons why, so fortunate to have met my wife, but one of them was that she really helped me start to incorporate, balance with what I was doing.
Yeah. So I might have read it wrong. I think of it as, if you want balance in life, you got to start off by investing and go down that path and figure out what you're passionate about and figure out what's going to create that forward momentum, but it takes more work. If you don't early and you're having too much fun, you pay the piper later. So I kind of misread what we were saying.
No. You had it right, which is because again, this was later on meeting my wife and then starting to have, more of that balance later. In the beginning, if I would have focused on that in the beginning, it would have, not allowed me to have gone down this path and found that clarity. So we are on the same page.
I got it. Well, David, I kept you a little late. I'm so sorry about that. I appreciate you being an entrepreneur that can go a little bit over. Sorry to whoever your next meeting is, but it was fascinating. It was just bringing back so many great memories for me. I had to keep going. Clarity over comfort. There's the words of wisdom. Thank you for making time for everybody on the Edge of Excellence today.
Of course. Thank you, Matt.